Today, I kind of just wanted to talk about my school's bass saxophone and kind of just bass sax in general, because this particular horn has its quirks, but bass saxophone in general is a pretty quirky instrument, I'd say. Yeah, I just want to talk about it a little bit in this video, so stay tuned. Alrighty, here's the horn in all of its glory. I guess I'll go over some facts or little tidbits that I know about the horn. I haven't done any prior research about these horns in particular, but I would say I know a good little bit about bass saxophones, just based off of what I've seen on Marketplace and some general history I've learned. For starters, this is a French wrapped and French manufactured bass saxophone, originally manufactured under the name Noblet, I believe. I have no clue actually how that's really pronounced, but shout out the French. This horn in particular though is stamped Vito, as many stencil horns were stamped back in the day, whether that was Yanagisawa or whatnot. But this horn seems to be newer based on a couple things. Not only is it a stamped horn, which I'd like to imagine means it was bought out by the Vito company, or just manufactured under them, but this horn is fully lacquered. I'm not sure if it's a re-lacquer or what, but typically the Noblet horns were some sort of clear brass body with silver nickel keys, and you can see this horn is kind of dark in a way that's close to cognac lacquer almost, but it's more similar to the dark Selmer lacquer, I would say, visually. So I think that's a cool little fact about the horn. Another quirk I wanted to mention with this horn is related to the upper structure construction of it, and it's that this horn being old, I don't know how old, I don't know what year, but it has a high F, which when you're talking about vintage bass saxophones, that's pretty atypical actually. Typically they only went up to high E flat, along with a lot of really old vintage baritones of the time. With this horn having the high F, clearly you also have high E. So chromatically, you have high D, E flat, and E. And it's kind of interesting that they're all in the back here. I'm very fascinated by the construction of the bass saxophone. And then this funny little key right here is your high F key. Very noisy, there's no cork on the lever. Even for these horns, they were not originally manufactured to high F. If you see some on the market, or if you've seen some in other places, you may have seen that they do not always have this high F key, that they were also manufactured to high E flat, I believe. So for a vintage bass saxophone, pretty atypical to see a high F bass. Kind of continuing shortly about the high F, you also notice that there's no fork F key. A lot of vintage saxophones, even the ones that went up to high F, did not have the fork key until later. But you'll see even on modern day bass saxophones, and every single modern day saxophone has some sort of fork F key to have an alternate way to vent that high note. But this instrument does have a bis key, which I know on some old bass saxophones is not always the case, and you're kind of just limited to that side B flat. But this horn also does have a very little baby bis key, which is also cool. Now you might notice I have the camera angled suspiciously low, and that's because we're going to be talking about the low C mechanism for this horn, which is very, very interesting to me. I believe I've only really seen this mechanism like this on what I believe horns that were branded as Holton or Holden. I've only ever seen it there. Seems to be the way they went for constructing this horn. And as you see, there are two different pads for this note, and they're all just connected to low C. You'll see when I press the lever down, they both close at the same time. And if you can definitely see how that works, as this rod goes all the way down to this key like normal. But I guess for extra support and maybe for tuning purposes was the reason why they constructed it this way. But you could see this rod that goes diagonally down, and this little flat pad that pushes a lever that extends off of this pad to the center, and it also presses down this pad as well. So it's like extra seal for this one. But when you push it down, it pushes both down, closes both. Super interesting construction that you really don't see on any other horn. Super rare. If anybody knows why they constructed it this way, please let me know. Like I said, I haven't really done too much prior research, but this is definitely one of the most interesting things about the horn. As you could imagine, playing with a like semi-complex mechanism like this, it does perform very slow. If you're trying to play fast passages, it does make it difficult because this does feel very heavy. As you can see, there's a lot for it to do just to close the pads, and you know, you'd be able to play the note. Not the best for mobility, but maybe it was really necessary for tuning on this horn. But that's how the low C works if you were curious. If you've seen my Instagram before, you know that I've posted with this instrument several times. A question that I get asked sometimes is if this horn goes down to low A. And I could see how one would think that because the bell is very high on this horn, and it looks very similar to what a low A baritone would look like. And you also can't tell how many pads are on I guess the other side of the horn, since when you see it being played, it looks like this. And you're probably like, what? Like, where are the low pads? Let me tell you something, okay? They're on this side. Whoa, right? Crazy. Nobody's ever done that before. So as you can see, only two pads. The one closer to the bottom is low B, and the big fat one at the top is your low B flat. So yeah, this horn, just like many other bass saxophones that aren't custom built, only goes down to low B flat, which is still an awesome note. That's it should be everybody's favorite note on the bass saxophone if it isn't crazy. I guess as I transition to things that are not only literally wrong with this horn because it's a school horn and it's been used by people for ages, but things that I'm not a huge fan of with this horn, I guess I'll expand a little bit more on the left side low pads here for low B and B flat. And the issues that I have with that is that when, especially on modern basses and modern saxophones in general, it just makes more sense to have the low pads on the right side, because when you sit down and play with the horn, they're away from you, they're away from your legs, it doesn't matter. When they're on the left side, obviously that causes some potential problems. When we sit down in sax ensemble, for example, which is where I play this instrument most often, the low B flat pad especially comes in contact with my legs if I don't have my legs swung out this way away from the horn. And if I need to play low B or something like that, that could be very problematic, as you know, playing a semitone away is not ideal, right? So that's a little annoying, because you either have to hold up the horn more with your arms, which obviously a horn like this, I would say probably weighs about 20 pounds. Not super easy to do for long periods of time. Also, with this horn being older, it's really big in your hands. This thumb rest here is obviously not adjustable, and it's not like long enough, like it's not tapered enough for your thumb, so it does kind of hurt after a while. But I would say I have average size man hands, and this horn, like the body of the horn, feels pretty large in my hands, so having to hold it up more isn't really ideal. Standing and playing is typically fine, because when you do stand and play, I feel like typically the bass saxophone goes across your body more than you are like holding the horn straight up or forward. But yeah, not a super big fan of that. I don't know if that was a stylistic choice or like a mechanical choice. Of course, gotta give them the benefit of the doubt. This instrument is from 1900 something, so they didn't have it all figured out then. And that's why modern horns today are so great and they're so cool, because we seem to have it all figured out for the most part. So now talking about things that are straight up wrong with the horn, there are two main things besides intonation. Intonation on any vintage instrument is going to be pretty abysmal, especially something like this, and it is pretty abysmal on this instrument. But mechanically, this low C mechanism, it's super cool and intricate, but you could also see why it's clearly very fragile. It has these two beams, but there aren't, like, especially this one is just kind of out there, not a lot of support for it, and it just kind of, you know, it's like bearing a lot of weight just on that. There's like a lot of tension on this one rod, which I think has caused this issue, where sometimes just from playing it, or if like I'm playing faster or more intensely and I hit the low C key, it'll actually shift this low rod out of place, and it just fucking dangles there. Excuse my French. French. But I literally just shove it back up in there like a puzzle piece. Pause. But yeah, that's one thing that's just straight up broken on the horn. But on to the next. So this next thing that I show you actually might be a little bit difficult to see because it's kind of embedded in the construction of the horn, but it's very important to the playability of the horn, and it's very frustrating to deal with. I've yet to send the horn in to get fixed. I definitely have to now, because funnily enough, right before recording this video, I took the horn out of the case and I'm like, oh my god, this is the worst it's ever looked. And the issue that I'm talking about is this brace right here, this little post, is between like the main body and this section of like the big old crook on the bass saxophone. But the issue is that this octave mechanism is on the crook, right? This section right here, the post is actually detached right here and moves freely. If you can see that here, that's a way better view. It actually moves freely, and you're like, oh, don't do that, it's so bad. It is what it is. Like, it's literally just separated right there, and it has been for a while. It needs to be like resoldered or whatever. Brought it into a repair shop to get like a quote on a fix. They said it'd be $80
Lord have
to
mercy.
put a new post in. That would be if I paid for it with my money right there. Not gonna do that. I'm gonna let the school pay for their instrument, definitely. But because this separation exists, it means that the octave hole for the pad here are not aligned, which means that air leaks out of the octave mechanism very regularly. Like, very regularly, I have to like push this closed. I don't have a large enough rubber band, or haven't even tried to put like a rubber band around this instrument to potentially like temporarily hold this closed. So that's what's going on with that. And what makes it even more frustrating is that if you've ever played a bass saxophone, especially a vintage one, even modern ones, it's still bad. It's such a large instrument that having balance with air traveling through the instrument to change octaves is a difficult task, I think, when it comes to like constructing an instrument, but also playing it. And so especially when you play the note octave D on a bass saxophone, it's very, very stuffy. Because of the separation here and the misalignment of the octave pad and all this is going on, kind of impossible to hit octave D without it just straight up honking, you know, because there's a big fat old leak right here. So that's definitely a pretty large issue. Luckily on bass saxophone, because it's so stuffy, what a lot of people do is they use the alternate, which is just palm D. And thankfully on lower instruments, or lower saxophones, the kind of like throat tone notes that come from using the side palm keys as an alternative to using the octave key are pretty decently in tune and pretty easy to play. Like there aren't a whole lot of issues with them. I'll just give you a quick example right now. I'll try and see if I can hit the octave D, and then I'll play the side key D, and you'll hear the difference. So that's the just octave D. You see, it's really difficult to come out. It's also really sharp, like super sharp. The tuning is better for this one since it makes it more flat. So it brings it down to closer to in tune, not exactly in tune, but also because it's so open at the top of the horn, you get a lot more volume out of this. Of course, when you're talking about moving in like a scalar movement, this isn't super convenient. If you're trying to get the like octave tone sound, but you're trying to transition because you can't play D with this one, because your limit, it only goes up to like F, and that doesn't really work. I'll play the palm key D now. So it honestly sounds more normal because of how clear it sounds. Of course, just like a lot more balanced in every way, it doesn't sound so stuffy. It just sucks that mechanically maneuvering through that alternate fingering and like your regular scale pattern fingerings, it tends to be more difficult on the horn. But that is the biggest issue with this horn. I'll definitely send it in to get it fixed now, because it's at the point where like the horn is not super playable, which sucks because I wanted to demonstrate some playing in this video, which I'll do. I'll just kind of thug it out, as the kids say. So before I get to demonstrating any playing on the instrument, just some like general bass sax things to talk about that people are typically curious about. I'm 5'11". This horn, you know, just sitting on the floor out of the case, I would say is a little under 3 feet tall. So pretty large instrument. Weight wise, I would say around 20 pounds ish. Maybe a little bit more. I don't know. Maybe I'm just skinny. But this instrument is pretty heavy. Not as heavy as I thought it would be, honestly. But definitely still a heavy instrument. It's like really big in your hands. So if you're thinking about marching an older bass sax, which they even used to march contrabass sax back in the day, then good luck and hit the gym, I guess, and hit some finger stretches, because man, those hands are gonna be cramping for sure. But that's about how big the instrument is in reference. Try to use the mirror here for a little better reference. I would say if you're gonna play this instrument, do not use a neck strap, or just don't use like any old like typical Neotech neck strap. On baritone and anything else I wear a neck strap. On this, I have to wear a harness. I don't know if it's because of where the neck strap loop is positioned, but I look like this, like I look like prime Joe Henderson, like against my will, trying to play this thing with a neck strap, because even if you pull the neck strap all the way up, your neck is still gonna be like down here at it. So a harness takes a lot of the weight off. Harness, great for this instrument. Not my favorite thing to wear when playing baritone sax, but bass sax is definitely pretty necessary for me. So now the fun part of playing the bass saxophone, which is playing the damn thing. We'll go over the range very briefly. The note that you heard in the beginning of this video is the lowest note on the bass saxophone, low B flat, which is a concert A flat, and the highest note is high F, which is a concert E flat, and I'll demonstrate it right now. So here's the lowest note. The highest note, very like super iffy on the tuning, but noodling. Something I forgot to mention about this horn that actually really irks me is that there's no spit valve. How are you going to make this loopy instrument with all these loops and places where spit can lay rest, but you're not going to make anything for the spit to exit? You know what I'm saying? So this is typically where you would want it, right? Spit just sitting down there, and you're probably thinking, well, Cameron, what do you have to do? What do I do? You gotta flip the horn. So you literally like flip it like this, and then it comes out. You see it dripping from my mouthpiece. Is that really gross? Yeah. Should I have taken my mouthpiece off? Probably. But that's how you have to get the spit out of this horn. There's literally no other way to go about that. But with that being said, that's the bass saxophone, everybody. If you're interested in looking at more players that play the bass saxophone, I would really suggest looking into Scott Robinson, #1. He has a fantastic sound. Check out his Emmett's Place video. He played When Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. And check out Aiden Brown. If you remember the video of the kid playing Flight of the Bumblebee on alto and baritone sax like a little demon, he's still a freaking demon today. He's absolutely shredding. He played giant steps on the bass sax. He transcribed Coltrane's solo. Literally nuts. And he has this horn. He has the older, like what I would assume is an older model of this horn. He played giant steps on it. I cannot play fast on this thing for shit, but he's incredible. In terms of Avant-garde, definitely check out Colin Stetson. Awesome, awesome stuff. And definitely, if you're taking the Wayback Machine, definitely check out Adrian Rollini. He's pretty much the pioneer of solo jazz bass saxophone. Fantastic musicians, fantastic instrument, all things considered. And thank you for watching. If you have any questions or any things you want to let me know in the comments, let me know. Thank you and have a good one.